السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. إن الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. First and foremost, barakallah fikum to SLMCC for considering me. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لا يشكر الله من لا يشكر الناس. He's not grateful to Allah, he who's not grateful to mankind. And so part and parcel of being grateful to Allah is to show that gratitude to the tools of Allah on earth, i.e. us as people. Now this Ramadan, for a lot of people, it's going to be a year where, well, we've never had a Ramadan like this before. Most of us are at home. Those of us at work are, we're experiencing scenarios where we've never been in them before. And so how we react to that as Muslims is really, really important. But for myself, this isn't new. And I wanted to share that with you all. 2 years ago, Allah's qadr was that I ended up in hospital. And I shared the story with a lot of people who are close to me. And the reason being is because I believe the person I am today has been shaped by those events. I was unable to benefit from the jama'ah, the community. I was unable to benefit from the masjid, from tarawih, from just even going into sajda. I was unable to do any of that due to Allah's qadr and an illness that befell me in that year. And so I had to be really practical with how I could try and earn Allah's acceptance. And alhamdulillah, the way I was raised was that fasting was always been a priority at home. From when I was 4 years old, I would try to fast half days to keep up with my mother. May Allah grant her Firdaus al-A'la. And so that's always been an emphasis for me. And so this shock, this disruption to my routine, I thought that I had no other way to get closer to Allah. And alhamdulillah, that year was an eye-opening experience. And a lot of us are unable to go to the masjid. All of us are unable to go to the masjid this year. We're unable to benefit from tarawih in the masjid. That doesn't mean that, the connection between you and Allah is no longer active. It should be even more active than it has been before. With the time that most of us have now, we've got no excuse. We've got no excuse to say that, oh, I can't read my Quran today because I have to wake up early for work. I'm back from work, I'm tired now. The Mus'haf is there. The Mus'haf is calling you. Allah is calling you. And it's really, the ball's in your court, whether or not you respond. And I really wanted to bring this to our minds because every year in the masjid, in all masajid, not just in the local masjid, in all masajid, there's always some sort of issue, there's always some sort of problem that requires forgiveness at the end of the month. But it's so much easier to think of things properly than to ask forgiveness afterwards. Whether or not it's arguing about who should be in the front saf, or if we're abandoning the sisters to just clean up after us, which is not a good thing at all. We should be using this opportunity at home to try and draw closer to Allah through the communal good deeds that we can do, not in our own individual ibadah. Cleaning up after yourself is, unfortunately, it has to be said to grown men and women that they need to be cleaning up after themselves and not having to rely on someone else to do so. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the walking, talking Quran, as Aisha radiallahu anha describes him, his character was that of the Quran. Did he rely on people to clean up after him? Did he rely on people to fix his sandals when they were broken, to patch his clothes when they were torn? He would be independent, free from the needs of others. And that's how we should be in our ibadah. We should be free from the need of others. If we're feeling bad about our relationship with Quran and we feel as though our relationship with Quran currently has affected us in a way that we can't benefit much from Taraweeh. We're not able to read from the Quran either from memory or by looking for long periods of time. Then Alhamdulillah, because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to leave us semi-ignorant about the issue, and by semi-ignorant I mean that we're aware but at the same time we try to bury it, try to just throw it behind us, then who knows where we'd have ended up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell the believers on Judgment Day, اقرأ وارتقي ورتل كما كنت ترتل في الدنيا. Read, recite and rise in rank as you used to in this dunya. How can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell you that if you didn't used to recite in this world now? We have so much time, so much free time, so many resources are available for us now, alhamdulillah, online, where we can access them for free. We have no excuse anymore. There's never been an intermediary between us and Allah. As great as the Anbiya are, we don't rely on them to make dua for us now that they've passed away. We need to call upon Allah alone. And you find that in the verses of Allah, in the verses of Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يسألونك عن المحيض قل هو أذى يسألونك عن الشهر الحرام قتال فيه قل قتال فيه كبير. They ask you about the sacred months in any sort of fighting in between. Say to them this and that. They ask you about a woman's period. Say to them this. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the issue of dua, there's no intermediary. فَإِنِّي قَرِيب, I am close. No one else is involved. And so with this opportunity that we have now, we have this chance where we can, who knows if we'll get it again, we can get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not complain about the status quo. If the Sahaba complained about how things were, imagine, think about it. Today we associate Mecca with Islam, with Taraweeh, but there was a time where Quran wasn't recited in Mecca. There was a time where the city of Mecca was filled with idols. People were worshipping other than Allah. This city in which Ibrahim alayhi salam had left his child. The city which is the synonym of Tawheed. If the companion said, if Allah wanted Mecca to be a hub of Tawheed, it would have been a hub of Tawheed. Why do I have to do this? Which is the attitude that a lot of us have. Would they have established Islam the way it is today? And we have to think back to our grandparents' generation too, when they came to this country. Very little education, if any whatsoever, but look at what they've achieved. They've established masajid for us. They've established halal food for us. They've established Islamic education for us, higher education too. All without the skills and the tools that we have today. So the expectation on us as a community is so much higher. But how can we do that if we're constantly fighting amongst ourselves, if we're constantly arguing amongst ourselves, if our fast is nothing but dry lips and hunger? How are we going to better ourselves? How are we going to really enjoy the ni'mah of this ummah, this blessed community? How can we benefit from one another's skills if we're constantly bickering and fighting? And I think back to the previous Ramadans and I think to myself, subhanallah, why did I engage in this? Why did I engage in that? And it's easy to say that in hindsight. It's so easy to say that. And Allah mentions that in the Quran about those who didn't believe in Islam. Ya laytani kuntu turaba. I wish I was dust. I wish I wasn't here to deal with the consequences of my own action or inaction. We don't want to be like that. And so to avoid that, we need to be active now. We need to have an active stance in our ibadah. We need to have an active relationship with our Quran, an active relationship with one another. Ask each other, how are you? How are you feeling? How's your family? How many of us have reached out to our brothers and sisters? And I don't mean sort of both ways. I mean, if you're a brother, if you've reached out to brothers, and the same way if you're a sister. How many of us have gone out of our way to inquire about our siblings in Islam? Where is that love that we're supposed to have for one another? It's easy for us to say, I wish if the masjid was open, I would have been doing that, I would have been doing this. But it's easy to say things and it's so much more difficult to be a person of action. And that's what differentiated the Sahaba from us. They weren't people who used to speak a lot. They weren't people who used to have high hopes and high dreams and then not meet them. Every year you find people saying, this is the year where I'm going to devote to a Quran course. This is the year where I'm going to learn Arabic language. This is the year where I'm going to go on Hajj. And nothing happens that year. Nothing happens the year after. But an individual is able to pay for a brand new car. He's able to pay for university himself. He's able to go to all of these exotic and fantastic holidays. Why are we giving Allah the loose change of our time and our effort? Shouldn't Allah be the priority for us? Because if we don't prioritize Allah in our lives, in our action, in our ibadah, in our thought process, how we think, if Allah isn't the fixed point of reference for all of that, how is Allah going to prioritize us in the akhirah? How is Allah going to prioritize us in our graves? And as bitter of a topic it is, as human beings, we try to put it off. We try to forget that we're going to meet Allah, we're going to have to meet Allah eventually. And we're going to have to meet Allah with what's in our pockets. I speak metaphorically, of course. And if we don't put in that effort now, what are we going to say to Allah then? What are we going to say to Allah on that day where there will be no opportunity for debate or argument, where your mouth will be closed and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will command your limbs to speak? These same limbs that were used to argue and cause your brother or sister in Islam grief. What are we going to say? You know, what excuse can we present to Allah? We can't present to Allah anything other than the fact that we are responsible for our own actions, and we have to deal with the consequences of those. So bi'idhnillah ta'ala, we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifts this coronavirus from us so that we can benefit from the masajid. But at the same time, be active. Don't just complain about the masjid being closed. What are you doing right now? How are you managing to adapt to your situation, your scenario? How is your iman evolving and developing? One of the ways I had to, one of the things I had to do when I wasn't able to fast, I wasn't able to go into ruku', I wasn't able to go into sajda even. I couldn't do anything. I felt as though Allah had turned me away in the beginning, but maybe that was just waswas. I realized that the women folk in our communities, they are stacking up on so much ajr, simply because out of no necessity, they don't have to do this for us, but they prepare our iftar for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he forgave an individual from Bani Israel who used to engage in a lot of evil acts. I won't mention them explicitly, simply because that person fed an animal, a thirsty animal. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish another individual because that person locked up a cat and refused to let it feed from the vermin of the earth. So what then do you think is the reward for somebody who goes out of their way to prepare suhoor and iftar? Inshallah. So what then do you think is the reward for somebody who prepares suhoor, prepares iftar? And as men, we should not feel as though this is something that's just reserved for women. It's reserved for the individual who's smart enough to capitalize from the rewards of others without their rewards being decreased whatsoever. You know, Even if it's as simple as preparing bottles of water, a few dates, giving them to your mother, giving them to your siblings, ensuring that you're able to find goodness wherever you can, turning over every stone, making the most of absolutely everything, instead of just sitting down and complaining about our situation. Because, like I said, if the companions just complained and complained and complained, you know, my mind takes me to another situation in the Sirah, where the Muslims of Medina had been surrounded by 10,000 people, and each and every single one of those people wanted to cause the Muslim community harm. What could they have said? We are outnumbered, maybe 10 to 1, maybe 15 to 1. What can we do? What can we do against odds like this? And the munafiqun, the hypocrites of that city, they would use that excuse to try and play with the iman of the Sahaba. But how did they respond? فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا. Their iman increased. Even though the fear was present in their hearts, their iman increased. How are we responding to the situation? It seems as though we have more taqwa of coronavirus than we do of Allah, as sad as that is. And by that I mean we're aware of the consequences of being careless, and we're aware of how it could cause us harm, and our actions reflect that. We should be aware of our our roles as slaves of Allah. How have our actions been influenced by that? How have we changed in our behavior, in our conduct with one another? Having thought about that, having realized that, having remembered that, unlike others, we know that there's a destination that we're heading towards, that there are questions to be answered. you know there's no escape from it. And for the person that prepares ahead of time, that's a comfort and not a source of fear, because there's nothing more beautiful than to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing that regardless of what you do, you will be short, you will be, you would have fallen short regardless. It's not through the virtue of our own actions, of our own deeds, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy on us. It's Allah's mercy, that in that consequent that results in us, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, entering Jannah. It's not that we've done something fantastic and now we deserve it. That's not the case. It's not, Jannah is not a receipt for your actions and your hard work. It's Allah's rahmah. But we have to earn Allah's rahmah. How do we do that? By showing rahmah to his slaves. Especially, and I speak to men a lot because as a man, perhaps my voice will reach you more than if it was a sister to have shared this with you. As men, please stop expecting the women folk in your households to clean up after you. You as a fully grown man are capable of being independent. Follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let him be your qudwa, your role model, your destination too. The character that you're trying to emulate. Did he leave things sallallahu alaihi wasallam for others to clean up after him? No, he didn't. And so what should we be doing to try and follow that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that this Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the best example for us. So how have we taken him as an example in our households, in our conduct in our conduct with one another, in our conduct with those who are younger than us? Unfortunately, there's this idea that if we're older than others, we're automatically right. That's not the case. And that if we're younger than others, they're automatically wrong and they're ignorant and they're old-fashioned. That's not the case at all. There should be a balanced approach to everything, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this Ramadan a Ramadan of change, a Ramadan of activity, and a Ramadan of no more excuses. No more excuses. We should make the most of this blessed month. Nearly 10 days have already gone, and it was only yesterday that people were wondering whether Ramadan would start on a Friday or Saturday. Before you know it, Ramadan is going to be over. And we're going to be thinking to ourselves, why did I let these days go by without having done something of substance? And that's a metaphor for life. Before you know it, you're going to be old and grey, if Allah lets you get to that stage. And before you know it, you're going to have so many regrets. So try and reduce those regrets now, because it's easier to deal with the pain of fatigue than it is to deal with the pain of regret. It's so much easier to deal with the fact that you're tired from having exerted that effort than it is to think about what could have been, what kind of person you could have been. And I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows me to act upon the things that I have said, because like I said, it's very easy to sit here and to criticize and to complain and to talk about these things. But what sets the people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves and the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prefers, aside from those who have fallen short in this life, is that they're able to act upon what they say. And I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to act upon what's been said, and that He allows us to be merciful, to be gentle, to be kind, to follow the prophetic example in when it comes to our akhlaq, when it comes to our manners, and when it comes to dealing with people. And bi'idhnillah ta'ala, we hope that the masajid are opened sooner rather than later. Barakallah fikum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
أمة مسلمة لك وأرنا مناسكنا وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا إنك جامع الناس ليوم لا ريب فيه إن الله لا يخلف الميعاد. ربنا إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا آمنا بما أنزلت واتبعنا الرسول فاكتبنا مع الشاهدين. ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار. ربنا إنك من تدخل النار فقد أخزيته وما
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope your fast been going well, going strong. Alhamdulillah, through Ramadan, I hope you're getting closer and closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and tasting the sweetness of Iman and faith, inshallah. We just have a few more seconds and then we will break our fast, inshallah. It's a good time to turn to Allah with your full heart and make dua for the ummah, for your family, for your community, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني لك صمت وبك آمنت وعليك توكلت وعلى رزقك أفطرت. Oh Allah, I fasted for you and I believe in you and I put my trust in you and I break my fast with your sustenance. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة في بيوتكم. الصلاة في بيوتكم. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The dua for after adhan. بسم الله. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وبعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Hope you have a beautiful remainder of the evening. Inshallah, we'll see you soon.